For 6 straight months, the man came in every Friday night, alone, quiet, always sat at the far booth, ordered the same turkey sandwich and coffee, and left a $100 tip on a $10 bill. No name, no small talk, just a warm smile and a nod before he vanished into the night. But last Friday, he didn't show up, and what the waitress found when she went looking for him changed everything she believed about generosity, grief, and the people we think we know. Jessie Martinez had been slinging coffee and taking orders at Leo's Diner for 10 years. At 34, she'd seen every type of customer you could imagine. Truckers passing through town, teenagers on dates, insomniacs seeking comfort in pie and conversation at 2 in the morning. As a single mom working double shifts to make ends meet, she'd learned to read people quickly. Who would tip well, who would complain about everything, who just needed someone to listen. But the man in the corner booth was different. He'd been coming in every Friday night for 6 months now, always the same routine. He'd walk in around 9:30, nod politely to whoever was working the front, and make his way to the last booth by the window. He was maybe 60, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of careful maintenance that spoke of limited resources but maintained dignity. Turkey sandwich on wheat bread, black coffee, no dessert, $10.13 total. And then he'd place a crisp $100 bill on the table, smile, that gentle smile, and disappear into the night. Jessie's coworkers had theories. He's probably some tech guy who sold his company, said Maria, the other night shift waitress. Or maybe he's in witness protection, joked Tommy the cook. Rich people do weird stuff like that. But Jessie had watched him carefully over the months. The way he held his coffee cup with both hands, like he was savoring the warmth. How he'd look out the window at the empty street, lost in thought. The careful way he folded his napkin when he was finished eating. This wasn't the behavior of someone showing off their wealth. This was something deeper. When he didn't show up last Friday, Jessie felt uneasy in a way she couldn't explain. She found herself glancing at his empty booth all night, checking the clock, wondering if he was okay. She barely slept that weekend, and she couldn't figure out why one customer's absence bothered her so much. When he walked through the door the following Friday, Jessie felt relief wash over her. But he looked different. His step was slower, his shoulders seemed heavier, and there was a sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He ordered the same meal, left the same tip, but this time Jessie was ready. She had made a decision that surprised even her. As he walked out into the chilly October night, Jessie grabbed her jacket and followed him. She felt ridiculous sneaking down the sidewalk like some kind of amateur detective, but her curiosity was stronger than her embarrassment. She expected him to get into a nice car, maybe head to one of the upscale neighborhoods on the hill. Instead, he walked. Block after block, his hands shoved deep in the pockets of his worn brown coat. Past the closed shops, past the old movie theater that had been boarded up for years, past the park where homeless people sometimes slept on benches. He turned down an alley behind 7th Street, past the abandoned pharmacy and the old library that the city kept threatening to tear down. Jessie hung back, staying in the shadows, feeling more foolish by the minute. The man stopped in front of a brick building that Jessie had passed 1,000 times but never really noticed. A small sign by the door read, Harbor House Transitional Living Center. He pulled out a key and let himself in like he belonged there. Jessie stood in the alley for 10 minutes, trying to process what she'd seen. This man who left $100 tips was living in transitional housing? It didn't make sense. The next day, she couldn't concentrate on anything else. During her break, she walked to Harbor House and approached the front desk, trying to look casual. "Excuse me," she said to the woman behind the counter, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and a nameplate that read Dolores. "I think I might know someone who stays here sometimes." Older gentleman, gray hair, glasses. Dolores smiled. "That sounds like Gerald. He's one of our regulars. Not homeless exactly, but he stays here some nights when he needs to. Are you a friend of his?" I'm a waitress at Leo's Diner. He comes in every Friday." "Oh." Dolores's face lit up. "You're from the diner. He talks about that place all the time. Says it's the highlight of his week." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. He spends most of his disability check there, you know. We've tried to talk to him about budgeting, but he says that diner keeps him connected to who he used to be. Jessie felt something twist in her chest. Disability check? Car accident about 2 years ago. Messed up his back pretty good. Had to stop teaching. Lost his house not long after. Dolores shook her head sadly. He's a good man. Just had some bad luck. That night at work, Jessie couldn't stop staring at Gerald's booth. She'd been thinking of him as some mysterious, wealthy eccentric. But the truth was so much more complicated. Here was a man who'd lost everything, living on disability payments, and he was giving away hundreds of dollars to waitresses he barely knew. Why? The following Friday, Jessie made another impulsive decision. She prepared Gerald's usual order, turkey sandwich, black coffee, and put it in a takeout bag. After her shift, she walked to Harbor House. She found Gerald in the common room, a tired space with mismatched furniture and fluorescent lighting. He was sitting at a small table, working on a crossword puzzle from an old newspaper. When he saw her, his eyes widened in surprise. Jessie? From the diner? He stood up slowly, favoring his left side. Is everything okay? I brought you your usual, she said, feeling suddenly shy about her bold move. I was worried when you missed last week. Gerald's face softened. That's very kind of you. Please, sit down. She placed the bag on the table and took the chair across from him. Now that she was here, she wasn't sure how to ask the questions that had been burning in her mind. Gerald, she said finally, I have to ask. The tips you leave, they're so generous. But Dolores told me you're living on disability. I don't understand. Gerald was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup she'd brought him. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. That booth where I sit, he said quietly, that was our booth. Mine, my wife Sarah's, and our daughter Emma's. We went there every Friday night for almost 15 years. It was our tradition. Jessie felt her throat tighten. Sarah was a nurse at the hospital. Emma was in her second year of college, studying to be a teacher like me. They were coming to meet me at the diner that night, 2 years ago. I was already there, sitting in our booth, wondering why they were running late. His voice cracked. They never made it. Drunk driver ran a red light. Gerald wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I was in the hospital for months after the accident. Lost my job because I couldn't stand for long periods anymore. Couldn't keep up with the mortgage. But when I got out, the first place I went was Leo's. I sat in our booth and I could almost hear their voices. Almost see Sarah rolling her eyes at Emma's latest college drama. The tips, Jessie whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. Sarah was a wonderful tipper. She'd worked as a waitress in college, so she knew how hard the job was. She always said that good service deserved to be rewarded generously. Gerald smiled through his tears. When I tip you $100, I'm not just paying for my meal. I'm paying for all the meals we would have shared, all the Friday nights that got stolen from us. 2 weeks later, Gerald came into Leo's diner for what would be the last time, though Jessie didn't know it then. Instead of heading to his usual booth, he walked straight to the counter, where Jessie was refilling sugar dispensers. I have something for you, he said, pulling a manila envelope from his jacket pocket. His hands were shaking slightly. Gerald, you don't need to. Please, he said. I got approved for assisted living housing up in Portland. My sister lives there, and there's a good support program for people with disabilities. I'm moving next week. Jessie felt a strange sense of loss. That's wonderful news. You'll be closer to family. I won't be coming back here, he said quietly. At least not for a long while, but I wanted to leave something behind. He handed her the envelope. Inside was a check made out to Leo's diner for $3,000. In the memo line, he'd written, "In memory of Friday nights, for anyone who needs a warm meal." Jessie stared at the check, speechless. $3,000 was probably most of what Gerald had saved. I want you to use this to feed people who can't afford to eat, he said. People who are down on their luck, families struggling to make ends meet, anyone who needs kindness. Sarah and Emma would have loved that. Gerald, this is too much. It's not enough, he said firmly. It will never be enough to repay all the Friday nights you gave me with my family. All the times I sat in that booth and felt close to them again." He reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for letting an old man remember what love felt like." Gerald left that night, and Jessie never saw him again. But his presence lingered in the diner like warmth from a fire that had been carefully tended. She talked to Leo, the owner, about Gerald's gift. They decided to create what they called Gerald's Fund, using his money to pay for meals for anyone who needed them. They put up a small handwritten sign in the window near Gerald's old booth. "If you need a warm meal, it's already paid for, courtesy of a man who loved Fridays." The first person to use the fund was a young mother with 2 kids, counting change at the counter to see if she had enough for pancakes. The second was an elderly man who'd been laid off from the factory and was too proud to ask for help until Jessie gently mentioned that someone had already taken care of his bill. Word spread quietly through the community. People began to understand that Leo's Diner was a place where dignity was preserved, where help was offered without judgment. Every now and then, someone would ask about the sign, about Gerald's story. Jessie would tell them what she felt comfortable sharing, that a man who had experienced great loss had chosen to respond with great generosity. Gerald never returned to Leo's Diner, but his legacy lived on in every person who sat in that booth and received a free meal. The sign in the window became a beacon of hope in the community, because kindness doesn't need to be loud to be legendary. Sometimes it just needs a booth, a memory, and someone willing to keep the tradition alive. If you believe that love can outlive loss, that kindness multiplies across strangers, hit that subscribe button. Because we all need reminders that there are still people like Gerald, people who choose to respond to their pain by easing someone else's hunger.